Diddy reportedly breaks down in tears in court after Cassie spilled shocking new details during her testimony, leaving the courtroom stunned. The revelations were so intense that even Diddy's legal team was visibly shaken, as Cassie laid out disturbing claims that could change the entire course of the trial. What did she say that pushed Diddy over the edge? We break down the jaw-dropping courtroom moment, the reactions from both sides, and what this could mean for Diddy's future. The courtroom fell silent. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the gasps echoed out like ripples. Diddy, one of the most powerful figures in music, had just broken down in tears. And all eyes were on Cassie. That's not a scene from a movie. It happened. And what triggered it wasn't a verdict or a sentence. It was testimony. Words. A voice. Cassie's voice, trembling at times, unwavering at others. And what she said sent shockwaves not just through the courtroom, but across the entertainment world. This isn't just another celebrity trial. It's not a public spat or a petty lawsuit. It's about power, silence, survival, and truth. And this moment, this one moment, might be the pivot point that changes everything. For Diddy. For Cassie. For the industry watching nervously from the sidelines. So what exactly happened inside that courtroom? What could Cassie have said that pushed one of hip-hop's biggest moguls to a public breakdown? What truth was so raw, so disturbing, that even Diddy's seasoned legal team, known for handling high-stakes battles, looked rattled and unprepared? That's what we're about to unpack. But first, a warning. This story isn't sanitized. It's not smoothed over with PR-friendly language. We're going into the raw details, the claims, the fallout, the public reactions, and what legal experts are saying this means for Diddy's future. By the end of this video, you'll understand what Cassie revealed under oath, how Diddy responded in real time, why this testimony could alter the trajectory of the entire case, and how this moment is already reshaping the public's perception of a man once seen as untouchable. You'll also hear what insiders, legal analysts, and fans are saying, and what's likely coming next in a case that's only just beginning to unfold. This isn't just a celebrity scandal. It's a collision between image and reality, power and accountability, silence and exposure. And no matter where you stand, fan, critic, or just curious, it's hard to look away when a moment this intense pierces through the glossy surface of fame. So, here's your seat inside the courtroom. No spin. No fluff. Just the truth as it was laid bare, and what that truth is now set in motion. Ready? Let's get into it. Before the courtroom tears, before the media storm, before Cassie stood up and spoke out, there was a relationship. To understand why her testimony hit so hard, you need to understand the weight of their history. Cassie Ventura met Sean Diddy Combs in the mid-2000s when she was a rising model and singer. She was young, stunning, and full of potential. He was older, powerful, and already a mogul with a reputation for building stars and breaking them. Their professional connection quickly turned personal, and from the outside, it looked like a modern-day music fairy tale. But over time, the public began to question the dynamics. Diddy rarely confirmed the relationship outright, keeping it in a space of speculation while still exercising an obvious level of control. Cassie's career, once promising with hits like Me and You, stalled. Many in the industry quietly asked the same question. Why wasn't she releasing more music? Why wasn't she touring? Why was she always in Diddy's shadow? For over a decade, the two remained on again, off again, their relationship cloaked in luxury and silence. Red carpet appearances, Instagram posts, and high-profile vacations painted the picture of wealth and status, but insiders whispered about tension, isolation, and Cassie's absence from the spotlight. By 2018, it was over, publicly at least. Cassie announced their split and moved on. She began a new life, eventually marrying personal trainer Alex Fine and starting a family. Diddy, meanwhile, continued to dominate headlines, launch ventures, and maintain his public image as a charismatic business mogul and mentor. But in 2023, everything shifted. Cassie filed a lawsuit alleging years of abuse, coercion, and control during their time together. It was no longer about rumors. The silence had broken, and the power dynamics that were once speculated about became part of an official legal record. The entertainment world took a collective breath. Diddy immediately denied the claims. His legal team called them baseless and offensive. But within 24 hours, a settlement was reached, and that raised even more questions. Why settle so quickly if the claims were false? What was Diddy trying to avoid? Still, the public was divided. Some saw Cassie as brave. Others accused her of chasing money. But behind the scenes, the investigation deepened and new cases emerged. What was initially seen as a private civil dispute quickly evolved into a broader legal battle with potentially criminal implications. And now, as Cassie returns to the spotlight, not as an entertainer, but as a witness, her testimony isn't just stirring headlines. It's tearing open the past, exposing what was hidden behind designer clothes, champagne bottles, and platinum records. This isn't just history. It's the foundation for what's happening in that courtroom today. A story that's been building in silence for years, and now, finally, exploding into the open. The energy inside the courtroom wasn't just tense, it was electric. Every seat was filled. Every eye locked forward. Even without cameras, the world outside was hanging on every word being whispered between the pews and every twitch of a legal pad. This wasn't just a high-profile trial. It felt like a cultural reckoning. Lawyers, journalists, courtroom sketch artists, and a few strategically placed public observers were in the room. Everyone knew something was coming. No one knew it would hit like this. Diddy sat at the defense table, flanked by his legal team, suits sharp, faces unreadable. But even from a distance, there was an edge to his posture. Not arrogance, not calm. Something between tension and anticipation. Maybe he didn't expect what was about to come. Maybe he thought he was ready. Cassie entered the courtroom with quiet resolve. No entourage. No theatrics. Her expression unreadable, her movements careful but steady. If she was nervous, it didn't show. She wasn't a pop star anymore. She wasn't a girlfriend. She was a witness now, and she knew the weight of her words. A slight hum filled the room when she took the stand. Papers rustled. A cough in the back row. But when the oath was read and Cassie looked the attorneys in the eye, the courtroom dropped into silence, like a vacuum. That silence stayed locked in place, as if the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Outside, the courthouse steps had become a media battlefield. Microphones, reporters, protesters, fans. The noise was growing louder by the minute. But inside, it was the kind of stillness you only hear when something important is about to happen. The kind of stillness before a verdict, before a truth lands and shakes the floorboards. This wasn't a circus. It was a powder keg, and the match was just about to be lit. She didn't rush. She didn't falter. Cassie stepped up to the witness stand with a composure that surprised even those who had followed her story closely. Her presence wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. There was no makeup glam, no visible emotion, just steady eyes, a steady voice, and something quiet but deeply resolute in her posture. The judge gave the go-ahead. The prosecutor stood. And then the questions began. At first, the room heard what they expected. Cassie confirming the timeline of her relationship with Diddy, her entry into the music industry, and how their personal and professional lives quickly became tangled. It was all calm, controlled, methodical. Then the shift came. Did Mr. Combs ever control your career decisions? Cassie paused. Her hands gripped the wooden sides of the witness stand just slightly tighter. Yes, she said. The prosecutor asked how. What followed wasn't a general complaint. It was specific. Cassie talked about missed meetings she wasn't allowed to attend. Songs that were shelved. Projects that were mysteriously canceled. Studio sessions cut short. She said Diddy would sometimes show up without warning and demand she leave mid-session, or that entire teams would be dismissed from a project overnight, without explanation. But it didn't stop at career interference. Cassie testified about isolation, being moved into private residences with limited access to friends and family. She spoke of controlling behavior emotional manipulation, and disturbing accusations that shifted the tone in the courtroom entirely. She recalled moments, private, haunting moments, where she said she felt less like a person and more like a possession. At one point, she described a chilling night in a hotel room overseas. Her voice cracked slightly, the first time since she'd begun. She didn't cry, but the weight in her voice dropped like lead. The courtroom was frozen. Diddy sat motionless. His attorneys stopped jotting notes. Then came the turning point. Cassie detailed a particular incident, graphic and horrifying, that caused the courtroom to pause entirely. The judge briefly recessed to allow the witness to gather herself. But it wasn't Cassie who needed the break. It was Diddy. Eyewitnesses said he leaned forward, his hands over his mouth. A visible tremble in his shoulders. He didn't look up. One of his lawyers reached over, whispered something. He shook his head. There were no outbursts, no denials, but there were tears. Diddy, once seen as untouchable, unshakable, was breaking. When the court reconvened, Cassie continued. Calm again. Clear. She spoke about fear, about why she stayed, about the threats she says were made against her if she spoke up, and finally, about what changed, about why she walked away, why she stayed silent for so long, and why she chose now, this courtroom, this moment, to speak. I didn't just lose years, she said, voice low but steady. I lost myself. And I want it back. You could hear people shift in their seats. You could feel the ripple. It wasn't just testimony, it was a reckoning. For Diddy. For the people who helped him maintain control. And maybe for an entire industry that often looked the other way. Cassie wasn't done yet. But the damage had been done. The courtroom would never be the same again. By the time Cassie leaned forward and began describing the details of the night in question, the courtroom had crossed a line. This wasn't about gossip anymore. This wasn't about celebrity headlines or speculation. It was about control, fear, trauma, and power abused behind closed doors. He told me, she said, if you ever talk, no one will believe you. I made you. I can break you. That quote hit like a body blow. You could see people shift in their seats, some with hands covering their mouths, some just staring blankly ahead. And she hadn't even gotten to the worst part yet. What followed was a series of graphic, disturbing incidents, not abstract or generalized but detailed and time-stamped. She spoke about nights where alcohol and drugs were pushed on her, about instances where she said she wasn't allowed to leave a hotel room, about being coerced into acts she described as degrading and traumatic. And then came the big one. The one that made the judge lean back and momentarily stop the questioning to clarify. Are you stating this occurred against your will? Cassie didn't blink. Yes. The prosecutor asked if there were others present. Cassie nodded. Sometimes, she said. Sometimes it was just him. Other times others were brought in. She didn't name names on the stand. Not yet, but the implication was chilling. This wasn't just abuse. It was orchestrated. And with that, the entire energy in the room cracked. Diddy's legal team, who had kept their cool up until this point, began to show visible discomfort. One of them stood up to object. The judge overruled. The line of questioning continued. Cassie then revealed how she was often monitored, with private investigators trailing her movements, and staff paid off to report back to Diddy whenever she made plans, took meetings, or contacted certain people. I felt like I was living in a cage with velvet walls, she said. It looked glamorous from the outside, but it was hell. She went on to describe moments when she tried to leave, only to be met with threats. Threats to her reputation. Threats to her safety. Threats to people close to her. And even after the relationship ended, she claimed she was followed, watched, and received anonymous messages telling her to stay quiet. For years, she stayed silent. But something changed when she became a mother. That's when I realized, she said, if I didn't speak, I'd be teaching my daughter that silence is survival. And that's not the world I want her to grow up in. The moment was so raw, so unscripted, that even the court reporter paused to wipe her eyes. And Diddy? He was staring into the table, not reacting, not looking up, not defending, just still. At this point, the prosecution asked Cassie whether she had told anyone at the time. She named two individuals, a former assistant and a close friend, both of whom had allegedly documented or witnessed some of the behavior. Whether or not they'll be called to testify remains to be seen, but the prosecution made it clear, Cassie is not alone. Then came a bombshell. Cassie claimed that at one point, Diddy offered her a six-figure sum to sign an NDA that would forbid her from ever speaking about certain events. She refused. Later, she said, the offer came again, this time with added pressure, legal threats, financial intimidation, and professional blacklisting. He tried to buy my silence, she said. But silence is what let all of this happen in the first place. By the time her testimony ended, it wasn't just the courtroom that was stunned. Word had leaked to the press. The hashtags were already trending. Supporters were gathering outside the courthouse with signs that read, "We believe Cassie," and "Silence is the enemy." This wasn't just a woman telling her story. It was a moment of reckoning for an entire legacy, one built on fame, influence, and control. And now, all of it was being unraveled, one testimony at a time. There was no warning, no loud outburst, no slam of a fist or dramatic exit, just a slow collapse. As Cassie's final words echoed through the courtroom, "He tried to erase me, but I'm still here." Diddy's facade cracked in full view. He had remained eerily quiet for most of her testimony, his expression unreadable. Occasionally, he conferred with his lawyers in hushed tones, scribbled on a legal pad, clenched his jaw. But when Cassie spoke of the incident that involved physical restraint, her describing in clear, measured language how she feared she wouldn't make it out of her room alive, something shifted in him. He buried his face in his hands. His shoulders began to shake. At first, it wasn't clear what was happening. Was it anger? Was he whispering something? Was it an act? But then came the unmistakable sound, a gasp, shaky breathing, and silence from the gallery. Diddy was crying. For a man who built a public image on dominance, on control, on power, on being the one who walks into any room and commands it, this was a rupture. In front of the court, in front of the prosecution, in front of Cassie, the courtroom sat frozen. His lead attorney placed a hand on his back, leaned in. Diddy nodded slightly, but didn't look up. The judge called for a brief recess. It wasn't officially labeled as one due to emotional distress, but no one questioned it. The room needed a breather. The gravity was too much. When proceedings resumed, Diddy was visibly changed. The defiance was gone. His shoulders sagged. He didn't make eye contact with the witness stand. He didn't engage in sidebar conversations with his legal team. He looked human. Not invincible. Not in control. Just a man staring down consequences that were no longer hypothetical. The media picked up on it instantly. Outside the courthouse, reporters relayed the scene. Sean Combs, once a symbol of untouchable fame, broke down in tears during today's testimony. Social media buzzed with speculation. Was it guilt? Was it regret? Was it shock that Cassie actually had the courage to testify? But the emotional collapse wasn't seen as a turning point of redemption, at least not by the prosecution. They didn't pause. They didn't soften. They continued to build momentum, using his breakdown as further evidence of just how much truth had landed. One legal analyst watching the trial told reporters, "I've seen defendants cry before, but rarely have I seen a moment where the emotional collapse aligns so precisely with damning testimony." It was visceral, and juries remember moments like that. Cassie, for her part, didn't look at him. Not once. She stayed focused on the attorneys, answered each question calmly, and exited the stand with her head held high. This wasn't her breakdown. It was his. From the start, Diddy's legal team projected control. They walked into court with confidence, armed with thick binders, crisp arguments, and a quiet smugness that comes from representing someone with deep pockets and decades of media polish. But by the time Cassie stepped down from the stand, that confidence was gone. They weren't just shaken, they were scrambling. As Cassie delivered allegation after allegation, the defense team's posture slowly changed. No more casual whispers between colleagues. No more leaning back in chairs or glancing at phones. Their attention snapped to the moment, faces growing tight, hands moving fast across notepads. When Cassie spoke of coercion and physical intimidation, one attorney looked like he wanted to object, but didn't. It was a strategic pause, maybe or maybe hesitation. The kind of indecision that signals a team caught off guard. And when she described being offered hush money to stay silent, the entire front row of the defense table shifted forward as if bracing for impact. The lead defense attorney finally rose with a request to approach the bench. His tone was urgent but measured. Behind him, another lawyer whispered to an assistant, who exited the courtroom, possibly to contact outside counsel or PR staff. Damage control was already in motion, even as the trial continued. But the cracks had formed, and nothing could reverse them. Observers noted the shift in tone from Diddy's camp. At the start of the trial, his lawyers issued confident statements to reporters. Mr. Combs looks forward to clearing his name. These allegations are false and defamatory. But after the breakdown and Cassie's testimony, they offer nothing. No post-hearing statement. No denial. Just silence. One insider close to the legal team told a reporter off the record, "This wasn't the day we expected. We prepared for a fight. We didn't prepare for that." They had likely counted on undermining Cassie's credibility, painting her as a former partner with a grudge or a motive. But her poise on the stand, the specificity of her stories, and the emotional weight of Diddy's reaction left them flat-footed. And now, they're facing a new problem: momentum. The prosecution has it. The court feels it. And Diddy's legal team, once confident and composed, is visibly trying to regroup in the middle of the storm. The mask of control is slipping. And the trial isn't even halfway over. The prosecution didn't flinch. Not when Diddy cried. Not when the defense looked rattled. If anything, they leaned in harder. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. From the beginning, their strategy had been clear. Strip away the celebrity sheen, dismantle the illusion of power, and let the facts, and the survivor, speak for themselves. But no one could have predicted how devastatingly effective that strategy would be once Cassie took the stand. As she testified, the lead prosecutor kept her tone neutral, calm, surgical, and respectful. She didn't push for drama. She didn't overreach. She knew the strength of the testimony spoke for itself. She asked tight, precise questions that built a timeline, a pattern, and a character portrait that directly challenged the defense's narrative. More importantly, she positioned Cassie not as a victim looking for revenge, but as a credible, courageous witness reclaiming her story. That framing was everything. Legal analysts watching the trial noted how the prosecution avoided grandstanding or emotional pleas. Instead, they relied on methodical storytelling. They had the receipts, text messages, emails, and statements from former staffers that aligned with parts of Cassie's testimony. While most of that evidence hasn't been publicly released, court documents suggest it may surface soon. After the emotional breakdown, the prosecution didn't pause or offer sympathy to the defense. They simply continued. Because from their perspective, the moment wasn't about emotion. It was about impact. If Diddy broke down because the truth hit too hard, all the better. If he broke down because he knew what was coming next, even more reason to keep pressing. They're building momentum, not just in the courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. And they're not done yet. While the courtroom was locked in silence, outside, it was a storm. Cameras clicked nonstop. Reporters from every major network jockeyed for position on the courthouse steps. Microphones were outstretched in every direction. News vans double-parked. Passers-by stopped and filmed on their phones. Some didn't even know what was happening, just that something big was. And by the time word got out that Diddy had cried, the chaos only intensified. Diddy breaks down in court. That headline spread like wildfire across Twitter, Instagram, and news tickers. Within minutes, social media feeds were flooded with speculation. Clips of analysts discussing the breakdown aired in real time on cable news, while live streams from the courthouse fed a nonstop churn of reaction. The crowd outside wasn't just reporters. There were Cassie supporters holding signs that read, "Protect survivors," and "We believe her." There were curious locals, fans, activists. Even a few high-profile celebrities were spotted slipping into the back of the gallery, hoping to observe the trial discreetly. But not everyone was cheering. Some showed up in support of Diddy, defending his legacy and accusing the court of trying to tear down another black mogul. The divide was clear. So was the tension. Police added barricades midday. Extra security was deployed. One woman with a megaphone shouted, "This is bigger than music. It's about power." Others chanted Cassie's name in rhythm. Meanwhile, gossip blogs, legacy media, and independent platforms spun the story in every direction. Some questioned Diddy's sincerity. Others called it the beginning of the end. And more than a few noted the silence from Diddy's usual inner circle. No one rushed to his defense. No press statements. No celebrity endorsements. Just silence. In that silence, the media did what it does best: fill in the gaps. And if day one of testimony drew this much attention, everyone knew what was coming next would be even bigger.